All right, folks, welcome. It is 1 o'clock and I want to get started here because today we have an exciting topic, which is brainstorming. What I find is that people don't brainstorm in organizations enough. It turns out that brainstorming is an incredibly effective tool for generating new ideas, not only new ideas, but improving on existing ideas. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I have 10 tips, 10 really good tips that are going to improve the quality of your brainstorms. And I'm going to go through them, and we have 12 minutes to do it. But first, I just want to start out with just a little bit of context because I don't think that people really understand the value of brainstorming. I don't think they understand the when and the why. Let's start out with this simple proposition, which is that a brainstorm is not a meeting, okay? If it looks like a meeting, if it feels like a meeting, you are doing it wrong. A brainstorm is all about imagination. It's all about creating possibilities. Meetings are usually about coming to decisions and criticism and judgment, which are often very good and useful, but that's not what brainstorms are about. So that's the first thing to keep in mind, is that this is supposed to be a little bit unorthodox. It's supposed to be a little bit weird, and it should be fun. I mean, what an amazing opportunity in an organization to actually be productive and have fun at the same time, and yet that opportunity is so often squandered. So that's the first thing. The second thing is about when to hold a brainstorm. So I think a common misconception is that brainstorming is only for companies like IDEO and Apple who invent these game-changing products, right? I mean, brainstorms are for people to sit around and invent the new iPhone or the iWatch. That's what I was alluding to before, which is that brainstorms are really good for that. Don't get me wrong, but we don't all work in universes where we're creating the next Pixar movie, right? I mean, one of the very best and most valuable ways to use a brainstorm is not to generate radically new ideas, but to improve on ideas that are already there. So let me give you an example. Imagine you're about to make a decision, or you have an idea for some action or something you want to do or implement in the world. And you think to yourself, well, I wish I had a little bit of a better idea, right? I mean, this is an important decision, or it's an important issue, it's an important thing that we're doing. If I just had a better idea, this would make this whole situation a lot better. That is a perfect opportunity for a brainstorm, right? Is to have a group of people come together and try to figure out whether they can come up with a better idea than the one you currently have. Because think about it, even if, as a result of this brainstorm, you improve on that idea by 10%, for example, and this is a decision of high impact, right? So let's say, if you were to quantify, this is a $100,000 decision, right? It's got $100,000 worth of impact. Well, with one brainstorm, improving it by 10%, you've now created $10,000 of value in a very short amount of time. So brainstorms, again, are incredibly important. And I want you to, as we're going through this session, think about all the times when you could use brainstorms and when you could implement some of these tips. So without further ado, let's go through these 10 tips. Tip number 1, set the right expectations. This is one of the biggest reasons why brainstorms fail to begin with, because you don't give people the right expectations. So here's what happens in a brainstorm is people sit down and they come up with a bunch of ideas, and then nobody knows what to do next, right? I mean, it's almost like too many ideas creates a problem, because now you've just created a ton of work for yourself. You have to now disappoint people because you have to tell them that, well, you know what, we're just not going to invest in your idea, or we're not going to be able to follow that through. So set the right expectations. All you need out of a brainstorm is one really good idea, right? And that's all you may want, right? So set the expectation that, hey guys, we're going to brainstorm a lot of ideas today because we're hoping for one great idea that we might end up acting on. Now, it may be the case that we might not even get one idea out of this, and that's okay. But the expectation is we're going to brainstorm this today, and then I'm going to sit in a room with a couple other people and decide whether this brainstorm makes sense or whether one of these ideas makes sense. So again, brainstorming is different than deciding, and you want to give people the expectation of whether they're going to be involved in the decision-making process or just the generation of ideas. Usually it's just the generation of ideas. Okay, tip number 2 about how to run great brainstorms. Start with a problem statement. This is not supposed to be a free-for-all. A lot of times when I see brainstorms happening or when I work with organizations to help them understand how to brainstorm more effectively, they think that brainstorms are just you get people in a room together and you just toss around crazy, wild ideas with no direction. And that is not true. What you need, you want to maximize imagination, but under some constraints, right? I mean, if you have people all over the place, you're not channeling the creativity in the right direction. So what you need is you need a problem statement. You need a question. One statement that focuses people's direction and imagination in the right direction. So if you're investing in a new feature for a software, for example, the problem statement might be, what is one feature that we could implement that would completely delight customers? That's a good problem statement, at least as far the best I can think of on the spot here. And then you're going to get a lot of ideas around this problem statement. Now, if people go, you want to give people a little leeway. If people kind of go on a divergent path a little bit, you may allow that, but at least start out with some constraints so people know what direction to go in. Okay. Tip number 3. This is the most important tip out of this entire webinar. If you only remember one thing, let it be this, which is that first, have people generate ideas individually. That is critical. Have people generate ideas individually, privately, before they even enter the room. It turns out that the problem with brainstorms, when you look at the research, is there's this thing called conformity that occurs. If one person starts out with an idea, all of the other ideas tend to be anchored towards that idea. So you start out with an idea about pigs, and the rest of the ideas are all about frickin' farm animals. This is the way that social dynamics work. So what you want to do to maximize creativity and imagination is let people come up with that ideas individually, uncorrupted by groupthink or conformity. So before the brainstorm, have them come to the brainstorm with at least something like 5 ideas to begin with of their own, without having collaborated with anyone else. Now you're getting people's individual creativity involved, okay? So that's critical. Number 4, set a goal number of ideas. The whole point here is quantity, not quality. Because the more quantity, the more you're going to get quality ideas, right? You're trying to bypass people's conscious filters. So you're trying to set a high number of ideas. Uncomfortable. It's probably going to be uncomfortable because as you strive towards that number, people are going to have to come up with things that they wouldn't have ordinarily thought of. Number 5, we want to move fast, okay? So meetings often run slow. Brainstorm should run fast. It should be like, you should be one of those auctioneers, right? Where you're constantly egging people to go faster and faster because again, you're trying to bypass people's conscious filters so that way they're speaking so fast and they're coming up with so many ideas that they don't care how they look or how they sound. Number 6, you want to withhold judgment. Now this is a little bit controversial because there's a little bit of mixed research on the area. But I think the benefits outweigh the cost of judging and criticizing ideas. So make sure that you don't criticize ideas and make sure you set the rules in advance that people should not criticize ideas. They should just generate ideas and criticize later. 7, the facilitator should not be the recorder, okay? Your job as a facilitator is so important. All the research shows that it's the quality and the experience of the facilitator that dictates how successful the brainstorm is. So you can't be wasting all your time recording these ideas, right? Get somebody else to record the ideas and you concentrate on generating imagination. Number 8, I think we're on. Use a big wall and post-it notes to record. The problem with like a whiteboard is only one person can write at a time, therefore only one person can talk at a time, therefore only one idea is generated at a time. A better method is to have everybody with Post-it notes in their own individual spaces, allow them to write their own ideas as they come to themselves and stick them on top of a wall or on a wall, on a big wall. And so that speeds up the process. People can contribute without having to have the floor because that just takes too long. Number 9, know when to jump. This is the critical skill of good facilitators. Ready? As a facilitator, here's what's going to happen. People are going to generate ideas and on a certain topic, right? And that they're going to be more and more good ideas, good ideas, good ideas. And then on that topic, people are going to, it's going to start to wane. The number of ideas and the quality of ideas is going to start to slow, right? People get on these trains of thought and these ideas start to link to each other. What you need to do is recognize when energy is low on a particular train of thought and jump to another train of thought, right? Say, okay, we've focused on this topic for a little while. Let's focus on this topic, and then let's focus on this topic. So keep the energy moving so that way you never hit that, that valley of kind of dead time. And then finally, the last tip for how to run a good brainstorm is to keep the brainstorm open for at least 24 hours after the brainstorm, right? It turns out that some of the best ideas come from what is called diffuse thinking, which is not when we're so focused in the moment, but afterwards when we're in the shower, when we're exercising, when we're just in a meeting with something of another topic. That's when some of the best ideas come in. So make sure that you have all of the ideas set up in some type of Google Doc or some type of cloud situation where people can contribute ideas before or after the session is actually over. Well, there you have it. Those are the 10 tips for how to run a brainstorm session effectively, powerfully. I hope you enjoyed them. Right now, what I'd like you to do is submit any questions that you have because we're going to do an optional Q&A segment. For those of you who have to go now, good luck and make sure you're brainstorming powerfully and effectively. Okay, so let's see if we have any questions in the pod here. I'm going to run over to my widget. So any questions you have about brainstorming, things that we covered. Let's see here. Somebody said, can you repeat number 4? Yeah, number 4 was set a goal number of ideas. And it should be a high number of ideas. It turns out that when ideas are free, right? So this is the, I call this the Bruce Springsteen concept of brainstorming, right? So it turns out that Billy Joel and Bruce Springsteen write albums and songs very differently. I found this out at a concert. It turns out that when Billy Joel is writing an album, he comes up with like 10 or 11 songs, and they're all amazing, and that's great. And he puts them all on an album, and then it's ready to go. Bruce Springsteen, on the other hand, doesn't do that. He comes up with 100 songs, over 100 songs, and then from there he whittles away at them, and 10 of them end up making the actual track, the actual album. So my proposition to you is brainstorm like Bruce Springsteen and not like Billy Joel, okay? Come up with lots of ideas because ideas are free, and often the 99th and 100th ideas are the best ideas. Okay, let's see. Okay, great question. Please elaborate on the role of the recorder. So like we said earlier, that there's a facilitator, which is presumably you, right? You're the one who is stirring the pot. You're the one who is fostering imagination and provoking good ideas. And then there's the recorder. This is the person who is responsible for actually recording the idea. Now, I told you the best solution is actually not to have one recorder, but everybody be a recorder. Give everybody Post-it notes and have them all with pens so that way they can write on the Post-it notes themselves and then stick them up on the board when they're ready. What you can have is one person who's responsible for being at the wall who will kind of either rearrange these ideas or call out the ideas if these people don't call them out themselves. Somebody to kind of manage the recording process. Sometimes people, for one reason or another, don't like that. They think it's a little bit too unorthodox. So they just really like the standard whiteboard. And you know what? You're boring, but I appreciate you. And if you're going to use a whiteboard, don't be the person at the whiteboard. Have someone else whose job it is to just basically be at the whiteboard to record ideas. Okay, so great question. Jeff has kind of one of the central questions of the critique of brainstorms, which is how do you keep domineering people from monopolizing the brainstorm? There are different schools of thought on this. A lot of people think that you should go round robin, like one by one, to make sure that people have equal time. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm from the Tom Kelly, who's the head of IDEO, who's kind of the godfather of brainstorming right now, as I can say, where he says that that's kind of ineffective. You know, let people talk. I mean, let the loudest people talk. That's fine. That's kind of what a group setting like a brainstorm, kind of a crazy brainstorm session is for. What I would say, though, is that's why it's so critical that you have this pre-brainstorming, where you have people contribute ideas individually, because that is one of the best ways for people who are introverts, who aren't the loudest people in the room, to get their ideas in there beforehand. And it's also a great opportunity for people to contribute after, when you leave the brainstorm open, right? So people who are generally quiet, who didn't feel like they wanted to speak up, can submit their ideas privately, individually afterwards. But again, I think that this idea of people who are, I mean, if somebody's so domineering that they're really causing a problem, of course, your job as a facilitator is to kind of, you know, settle them down a little bit. But generally, I think enthusiasm should be encouraged in these kinds of meetings. Other kinds of meetings, you know, that may pose a little bit more of a problem. But I think in brainstorms, it should generally be encouraged. Okay, well, we have a lot of questions here. I probably won't be able to get to all of them, but I can do a couple more. Can you use more than one problem statement per session? That's a great question. I personally believe that it's better to use just one problem statement. Now, this of course depends. I mean, if I were to find out your specific situation, maybe we could talk a little more specifically about it. But since this is a general session, I'll talk generally about it, which is that I'm very much of the mindset of one goal, one meeting, or one session, right? That's kind of pervades all of my work, whether it comes to brainstorms or meetings. And Tom Kelly, for example, might have a different advice for you. He usually brainstorms for 60 to 90 minutes. I advocate shorter brainstorming sessions, intense, short, one specific problem statement, and then really hit that one hard. I think this is a preference thing. I think this depends on your organization and the culture of your team. And you may want to experiment with different things, but what you don't want is you don't want to diffuse the creativity too broadly across different problems. I think the best way to run a brainstorm is to focus the imagination on solving one particular problem. Another person is asking to repeat one of the numbers. I'm actually going to send out in the follow-up email, which I always send out, I will send out a list of these numbers so you all have them. I'm going to take one more question. Let's see if there's a good one here. Great 10 tips. Well, thank you, Niles. Any suggestion to break legacy thinking patterns in a conservative organization? That is to kickstart some out-of-the-box thinking. This is an entirely, we could have an entire webinar or full day event on this. And a lot of my life's work is to kind of get organizations to see that the status quo is no longer sufficient and they need to think out of the box. So I don't know if I can answer this quite adequately here, but that is kind of one of the purposes of brainstorms. Is if you ask, again, I talk about Tom Kelly a lot, but he's got some great insights on this. If you ask Tom Kelly what brainstorming is for, it's not just about the tool. It's not just the tool to generate ideas. It's also about creating a culture that respects and acts on innovation. You know, Tom Kelly says it all the time, which is that, you know, if you just brainstorm once every month, it's kind of like going to the gym once a month, right? You're not really doing anything. What he advocates is brainstorms every single, they do it every single day, but so regularly that people get in the mode of realizing that there are always different creative solutions to solve problems. And the current one that we're doing right now isn't always the best. And if you can, and this is obviously a project, it doesn't happen all at once, but if you can continually institute these brainstorms, you can start to, I believe, shift the mindset in the organization slowly but surely in the direction of we need to be more innovation. So it's kind of like treating the symptom instead of the cause, but by treating the symptom, you're actually getting some headway with the cause. Anyway, this is the power of brainstorming. I feel very strongly about brainstorms. I think they're fantastic. I hope you do too. Thank you so much for attending this session. There's going to be more to come. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, let me know. I will be recording this, and hopefully it recorded okay, and I will be sending it out. So please share this with your friends and colleagues. It's for them as much as it is for you. Thank you, and have a great day.